Okay, now we come to the next sutta, 122, Mahasunnata Sutta, the greater discourse on voidness. This one is a very important sutta. That's very important from the Dhamma point of view. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Sakyan country at Kapilavatthu in Kuroda's park. Then when it was morning, the Blessed One dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, went into Kapilavatthu for alms. When he had wandered for alms in Kapilavatthu, and had returned from his alms round, after his meal he went for his daytime abiding to the dwelling of Kala Kemaka the Sakyan. Now on that occasion there were many resting places prepared in Kala Kemaka the Sakyan's dwelling. When the Blessed One saw this, he thought, there are many resting places prepared in Kala Kemaka the Sakyan's dwelling. Do many monks live here? Now on that occasion the Venerable Ananda, along with many monks, was busy making robes at Gatha the Sakyan's dwelling. Then when it was evening, the Blessed One rose from retreat and went to Gatha the Sakyan's dwelling. There he sat down on a seat made ready and asked the Venerable Ananda, Ananda, there are many resting places prepared in Kala Kemaka the Sakyan's dwelling. Do many monks live there? Venerable Sir, many resting places have been prepared in Kala Kemaka the Sakyan's dwelling. Many monks are living there. This is our time for making robes, Venerable Sir. Stop here for a moment. This time for making robes is the last month of the rain season. I mentioned last night that in India the rains season is four months. So the first 3 months the monks have to stay in one place for the rains retreat. And after the 3 months, the last month, they are allowed to make robes because the Buddha allowed them only once a year to make robes because the Buddha didn't want them to spend too much time looking for cloth to make robes and all that. So that one month they are busy making robes. This is the time. And the Buddha said, Ananda, a monk does not shine by delighting in company, by taking delight in company, by devoting himself to delight in company, by delighting in society, by taking delight in society, by rejoicing in society. Indeed, Ananda, it is not possible that a monk who delights in company, takes delight in company, and devotes himself to delight in company, who delights in society, takes delight in society, and rejoices in society, will ever obtain at will, without trouble or difficulty, the bliss of renunciation, the bliss of seclusion, the bliss of peace, the bliss of enlightenment. But it can be expected that when a monk lives alone, withdrawn from society, he will obtain at will, without trouble or difficulty, the bliss of renunciation, the bliss of seclusion, the bliss of peace, the bliss of enlightenment. Indeed, Ananda, it is not possible that a monk who delights in company, takes delight in company, and devotes himself to delight in company, who delights in society, takes delight in society, and rejoices in society, will ever enter upon and abide in either the liberation by mind, in either the liberation of mind that is temporary and delectable, or in the liberation of mind that is perpetual and unshakable. But it can be expected that when a monk lives alone, withdrawn from society, he will enter upon and abide in the liberation of mind that is temporary and delectable, or in the liberation of mind that is perpetual and unshakable. I'll stop here for a moment. So here you can see when the Buddha found out that there were many monks staying in one dwelling. This Kala Kemaka's dwelling must be a very big kuti, very big building where many monks can stay. So the Buddha was not happy. The Buddha says, if monks delight in company, delight in society, it is not possible to obtain the bliss of renunciation, the bliss of seclusion, the bliss of peace, the bliss of enlightenment. This refers to the jhanas, states of meditative absorption, which are absolutely necessary for enlightenment, the steps to enlightenment. So also in the paragraph 4, the Buddha says, if a monk delights in company and rejoices in society, he cannot obtain the liberation of mind that is temporary and delectable. This liberation of mind that is temporary and delectable probably refers to the jhanas. And then, or the liberation of mind that is perpetual and unshakable. This probably refers to the paths and fruits, the Aryan stages of paths and fruits. Because the Aryan stages are perpetual, and you cannot, once you have attained it, you cannot fall out of those states. So they are perpetual, unshakable. So the liberation of mind that is temporary are the jhanas, and the liberation of mind that is perpetual are the paths and fruits, the Aryan stages. So you see here the Buddha stresses very much on solitary living for a monk, because the Buddha says here, it's obvious that only by living alone a monk can attain the various stages. Although there are exceptions, but generally, if a monk wants to attain liberation, then it is important to stay alone. And this is very different from the Mahayana teachings. In the Mahayana Bodhisattva precepts, it is not allowed for a monk to live alone, especially in the forest. He has to associate with society. And then you have sutras like the Vimalakirti Sutra, where they say the Bodhisattva Vimalakirti has attained such a high state that he has surpassed the Arahant Sariputta, and he likes to always mix with high society and take delight in company and society. So here you can see from the Buddha Sutta that it is not possible for such a person to even attain any jhana, not to talk about the Aryan stages. Now I come to paragraph 5. I do not see even a single kind of form, Ananda, from the change and alteration of which there would not arise sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair in one who lusts for it and takes delight in it. However, Ananda, there is this abiding discovered by the Tathagata to enter and abide in voidness internally by giving no attention to all signs. If while the Tathagata is abiding thus, he is visited by monks or nuns, by men or women lay followers, by kings or kings' ministers, by other sectarians or their disciples, then with the mind leaning to seclusion, tending and inclining to seclusion, withdrawn, delighting in renunciation, and altogether done with things that are the basis for taints, he invariably talks to them in a way concerned with dismissing them. Now stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says there is no single form that if we lust for it and take delight in it, that it would not cause sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair to arise in us when any change occurs in that form. In other words, if we love any person, we are attached to any person, and when something happens to that person, it is inevitable that sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair would arise in us. So that's why the Buddha says, be very careful. If you don't want to suffer, don't be too attached. Then the Buddha says that the Buddha, he enters into this signless concentration of mind, this presumably the state of the cessation of perception and feeling, which the Buddha can easily enter into. So when he enters that state, the mind inclines to seclusion. The mind tends to withdraw. It goes into that state of utter serenity and great bliss. So when somebody comes to talk to him, he will talk in such a way so that they know that he wants to dismiss them. So they will have to make the talk as short as possible. There are some people, when they come to talk with the monk, they like to spend a lot of time talking. But if the monk is interested in meditation, he doesn't want to talk a lot. So he wants to dismiss that person. So whatever monks can attain high states of tranquility, they like to spend a lot of time in those states, and they don't like to associate with people a lot. They tend to be aloof from society. Therefore, Ananda, if a monk should wish, may I enter upon and abide in voidness internally, he should steady his mind internally, quiet it, bring it to singleness and concentrate it. And how does he steady his mind internally, quiet it, bring it to singleness and concentrate it? Here, Ananda, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana, and similarly second jhana, third jhana, and fourth jhana. That is how a monk steadies his mind internally, quiets it, brings it to singleness and concentrates it. Then he gives attention to voidness internally. While he is giving attention to voidness internally, his mind does not enter into voidness internally or acquire confidence, steadiness and decision. When that is so, he understands thus, while I am giving attention to voidness internally, my mind does not enter into voidness internally or acquire confidence, steadiness and decision. In this way, he has full awareness of that. He gives attention to voidness externally. He gives attention to voidness internally and externally. He gives attention to imperturbability. While he is giving attention to imperturbability, his mind does not enter into imperturbability or acquire confidence, steadiness and decision. When that is so, he understands thus, while I am giving attention to imperturbability, my mind does not enter into imperturbability or acquire confidence, steadiness and decision. In this way, he has full awareness of that. Then that monk should steady his mind internally, quiet it, bring it to singleness and concentrate it on that same sign of concentration as before. Then he gives attention to voidness internally. While he is giving attention to voidness internally, his mind enters into voidness internally and acquires confidence, steadiness and decision. When that is so, he understands thus, while I am giving attention to voidness internally, my mind enters into voidness internally and acquires confidence, steadiness and decision. In this way, he has full awareness of that. He gives attention to voidness externally. He gives attention to voidness internally and externally. He gives attention to imperturbability. While he is giving attention to imperturbability, his mind enters into imperturbability and acquires confidence, steadiness and decision. When that is so, he understands thus, while I am giving attention to imperturbability, my mind enters into imperturbability and acquires confidence, steadiness and decision. In this way, he has full awareness of that. Stop there for a moment. So here, the Buddha says, for a monk to enter, for a monk to steady his mind internally, quiet it and bring it to singleness and concentrate it, he has to attain the 4 jhanas. And to attain the 4 jhanas, different monks will have different objects of meditation. What the Buddha uses is anapanasati, mindfulness of the breath. And the Buddha says, if a monk tries to attain to give attention to voidness internally, but his mind does not enter into that voidness internally, and then he should try to contemplate on voidness externally, and if that is not successful, then he should try both internally and externally, and then after that try imperturbability. This imperturbability refers to the 4th jhana and above, the state of tranquility, which is such a high state. Then the Buddha says, if he cannot do that, then he must go back to entering the jhanas, the 4 jhanas, and attain up to the 4th jhana. Then after he has attained the 4th jhana, the mind becomes very tranquil. And then at that point, then having come out of the 4th jhana, then he should give attention to voidness internally, then he should be able to enter into it. And also all the others, externally, internally and externally, and the sign of imperturbability. This giving attention to voidness internally is mentioned in paragraph 6. That means by giving no attention to all signs, not giving attention to any sign, is to enter into his mind. Okay, now we come to paragraph 11. When a monk abides thus, if his mind inclines to walking, he walks thinking, while I am walking thus, no evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief will beset me. In this way, he has full awareness of that. And when a monk abides thus, if his mind inclines to standing, he stands. If his mind inclines to sitting, he sits. If his mind inclines to lying down, he lies down, thinking, while I am lying down, thus no evil, unwholesome states will beset me. In this way, he has full awareness of that. When a monk abides thus, if his mind inclines to talking, I'll stop here for a moment. So here, if this monk can give attention after attaining the 4 jhanas, if he can give attention to the voidness internally, externally, and imperturbability, and enter into it, and then when he comes out of it, if he's walking or standing or sitting or lying down, then he says, Buddha says, no evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief will beset me. This covetousness and grief arises from craving for sensual objects. Craving for sensual objects, then you have covetousness arising. If you are still caught up with sensual desire, then you have covetousness. But if you cannot get what you want, then grief will arise. So covetousness and grief comes from sensual desire, desire for sense objects, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts. So he has attained those states, those high states where he can enter into voidness or imperturbability. Then these covetousness and grief will not beset him. He is no more interested in sense objects. When a monk abides thus, if his mind inclines to talking, he resolves, such talk as is low, vulgar, coarse, ignoble, unbeneficial, and which does not lead to disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. That is, talk of kings, robbers, ministers, armies, dangers, battles, food, drink, clothing, beds, garlands, perfumes, relatives, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, countries, women, heroes, streets, wells, the dead, trivialities, the origin of the world, the origin of the sea, whether things are so or are not so. Such talk I shall not utter. In this way he has full awareness of that. But he resolves, such talk as deals with effacement, as favors the mind's release, and which leads to complete disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. That is, talk on wanting little, on contentment. Wanting little is also translated as few wants. On contentment, seclusion, aloofness from society, arousing energy, virtue or moral conduct, concentration, wisdom, deliverance or liberation, knowledge and vision of deliverance. Such talk I shall utter. In this way he has full awareness of that. I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, if the monk abides in these states of these deep states of tranquility, then he will not engage in base talk. This such talk as is low is tirachana kata, literally translated as animal talk, worldly talk. But he will only talk what concerns the Dhamma. When a monk abides thus, if his mind inclines to thinking, he resolves such thoughts as are low, vulgar, coarse, ignoble, unbeneficial, and which does not and which do not lead to disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. That is, thoughts of sensual desire, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of cruelty. Such thoughts I shall not think. In this way he has full awareness of that. But he resolves such thoughts as are noble and emancipating, and lead the one who practices in accordance with them to the complete destruction of suffering. That is, thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-ill will, and thoughts of non-cruelty. Such thoughts I shall think. In this way he has full awareness of that. Stop here for a moment. So here also the Buddha says that this monk, he will be aware of his thoughts. He only think right thoughts, not wrong thoughts. Ananda, there are these 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What 5? Forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. Sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body, that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. These are the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. Herein a monk should constantly review his own mind thus. Does any mental excitement concerning these 5 chords of sensual pleasure ever arise in me on any occasion? If on reviewing his mind the monk understands, mental excitement concerning these 5 chords of sensual pleasure does arise in me on certain occasions, then he understands, desire and lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure are unabandoned in me. In this way he has full awareness of that. But if on reviewing his mind the monk understands, no mental excitement concerning these 5 chords of sensual pleasure arises in me on any occasion, then he understands, desire and lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure are abandoned in me. In this way he has full awareness of that. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says a monk should examine his own mind and see whether he has any desire and lust for sight, sounds, smells, taste and touch. Unless a monk has attained jhana and constantly abides in jhana, otherwise he would still have this desire and lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. So not simply any monk can get rid of desire and lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. Only the monk who constantly abides in jhana, in which case he will be not interested to see, to hear and all that. He's not interested. He won't direct his senses to the sense objects. He will abide internally most of the time. Ananda, there are these 5 aggregates affected by clinging, in regard to which a monk should abide contemplating rise and fall thus. Such is material form or body, such its arising, such its disappearance, such is feeling, such its arising, such is disappearance, such is perception, such is arising, such is disappearance, such is volition, such is arising, such is disappearance, such is consciousness, such is arising, such is disappearance. When he abides contemplating rise and fall in these 5 aggregates of attachment, the conceit I am based on these 5 aggregates of attachment are abandoned in him. When that is so, the monk understands the conceit I am based on these 5 aggregates of attachment is abandoned in me. In that way he has full awareness of that. These states have an entirely wholesome basis. They are noble, supramundane and inaccessible to the evil one. So here the Buddha says to get rid of the conceit I am, which is very difficult to do. That only the Arahant can get rid of the conceit I am. The Buddha says we should constantly contemplate the 5 aggregates of attachment which we take to be I or mine, or I am in the 5 aggregates, or the 5 aggregates are in me. So constantly we should see the impermanence of the body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, or body and mind.